Welcome back to the podcast and thanks for listening in. In today's episode, I'm talking to Tracey. Tracey talks about what it was like growing up in the forces, about moving around and settling in different places, and she also explains how being a forces child helped shape her life in the future. If you like this podcast or the previous ones, please consider buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Frankie'sPod. It just goes to help fund the software and the hosting. Hi, welcome back to the podcast. Today we're talking to Tracey. It's a bit of a different one today. We've got this from the view of somebody who was brought up in the army. Tracey's father was in the Coldstream Guards. Hiya Tracey, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks. Hi, Andy.
All right. So if you just want to let us know what your life was like growing up in the army, if we can start off with where were you born?
I was actually born in Middlesex, so I'm not really sure where my dad was stationed at the time. My first recollection of living anywhere is in Iserlohn, so I must have been a couple of years old then.
What memories have you got of that?
The Canadian naffy, for some reason. Having my first Marmite sandwich, and I hated it. But my mum was at work, so we was looked after by Auntie so-and-so, who invited us in for dinner. She gave me this sandwich, I just bit into it, and I was like, what the hell is that? And that was Marmite. And so I've never eaten it since. And that's about it from Iserlohn. Obviously, I was just a top then.
Yeah.
We lived in Munster as well, which I don't recall much from Munster, to be honest. Most earliest recollection is when we lived in Chelsea Barracks in the 60s. I was born in 61, so yes, I am that old. So
we're all getting
mid-60s. I've got there. Sort of mid to late 60s, Chelsea Barracks, which they were good memories. We used to sort of have obviously the big parade square. We used to watch all the soldiers marching. We used to go over to Battersea Park, and that was our playground really, Battersea Park.
All right.
We used to go to a small school round a corner, St Barnabas, where all the kids it was basically all the army kids from Chelsea Barracks really. So we had a padre who made us go to church on a Tuesday. From Chelsea we went to Guards Depot at Pirbright. That was good. Learned to swim, went on the assault courses, which wasn't meant to, but we did. Learned how to get a bit tough. We had to climb this and jump that, and I enjoyed it. It was good. Pirbright, went to Berlin, which, as you know, Berlin, this is obviously in the time when this is mid-70s, we took over from the Cheshire Regiment, and we went to youth club in Smuts Barracks. We went to school at RAF Gatow. We went swimming in the Olympic Stadium swimming pool, which was brilliant. It's a 50-metre pool as opposed to a 25-metre. We obviously visited East Berlin. You got guards there with guns pointing at you, or so you thought they were pointing at you. Quite scary as a kid. Berlin. And then we came back to the UK. Oh yeah, we went to Westbury. My dad joined the Regular Commissions Board in Westbury, while the battalion went to bloody Hong Kong. It's like, yeah, cheers, Dad. We'll go to Wiltshire, they go to Hong Kong. So, yeah, we hated him for a while. So, yeah, it was good.
The two places I always wanted to go while I was serving was Berlin and Hong Kong. I never got to go either of them. So, yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
I'd imagine growing up in Berlin
was
amazing.
Well, for kids it was, because obviously you couldn't go outside West Berlin, so everything was laid on.
Yeah.
The route buses were obviously free, so we'd jump off a school bus, jump onto a route bus up to the sort of Berlin Infantry Brigade swimming pool, That was free to get in. Yeah, it was good. We did school trips and things like that to the wall and to places of interest and the Philharmonic sort of building and the Reichstag and the Brandenburg tour and all the rest of it. And I think, as a forces kid, how many civvy kids would have got that opportunity?
No.
They don't, they?
No.
In fact, when we moved from Berlin to Westbury in Wiltshire, there was only 6 quarters at the RCB. So when I joined the local comprehensive school, about the age of 14, the kids said, like, well, where have you just come from? And I said, Berlin. And they went, what, Berlin? And I was like, yeah, Berlin. And they were like, you liar. I said, no, I'm not lying. They said, yes, you are. You're a liar. And they was just sort of like ignorant to the fact that us forces can come and go as we want.
Yeah.
Whereas they thought I'd jumped the wall or something. I said, how do you think I got out? They said, well, you have to get over the wall. I went, no, my dad's a bloody soldier, So, yeah. And it shows how small-minded civvy kids were.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd lived in Iserlohn, Münster, Berlin,
Yeah, I mean,
and I'd seen a lot of stuff.
It's not just the kids who are, civvies don't see, it's not their fault.
No, it's just their way of life, isn't it?
Yeah, so they don't get to see or understand what the life is like for the forces. And I mean, a lot of people just don't understand, and nobody gives. You see, like you hear, listen to other podcasts, you see stuff on the TV and stuff like that, and it's all about the soldiers, the serving soldiers, and stuff like that, and which is great, but there's less on about how it affects the families. There is stuff out there. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there isn't, but there's not all that many people consider what it's like for yourself growing up in the forces. Like my kids when they were growing up in the forces, the kids, like you said, you probably know no different because you were brought up in it. And then when you go into an environment where there's civilian children, they have no idea what you've been through. Like both my kids left Germany to come back to the UK when we got posted back. I went to a normal school, a civilian school, and and a lot of the kids who were from camp went to a different one. Unfortunately, they couldn't get it, so they moved over to this other school there was only 2 or 3 forces kids in there, and like my son, he's moved around everywhere with me, and he's got, even now, all these years later, he's got no accent. So when he turned up at school,
me neither.
Yeah, they all thought he was dead posh and everything like that. They're like, at the school in the middle of the northeast, with everyone with the thick Geordie accents, and him rocking up with no accent, they were all just like, yeah, type of thing. So I mean, it sounds like you had a really good time in Berlin. So after that, you went to say Westbury one, that's right?
Yeah, I mean, you're saying about accents. Sometimes when you're in a place as a child, let's say, and you haven't got an established accent, you tend to sort of like adopt where you are.
Yeah.
So by the time I left Westbury, I was talking like that. I was talking like a carrot cruncher, but I wasn't aware of it. It was just the kids around me was all talking like it, so I talked like it as well, and I just talked like that. I did, and now I wasn't proud of it, believe me. But people say, "Where do you come from?" I say, "Nowhere."
Yeah.
What do you mean nowhere? I say, well, I don't really come from anywhere. Even when I was born, I was a poorly baby, apparently. So back in the 60s, it wasn't a case of special care baby units in every hospital. So I was like carted off to bloody Cornwall somewhere, in a special care baby unit for 6 months. And my mum and dad, because they didn't have a lot of money, they didn't even bother coming to visit me because they couldn't afford it.
Yeah, well,
So, but the doctor sort of said to them, you can't have the baby back because your quarter's damp. And she's got, I was born with bronchial pneumonia. So they said, you can't have her back. So, the army had to sort of like rehouse them into a decent quarter without damp so that they could have me back. So, yeah, so they got a better house because of me. But I remember coming back from Germany, and when we moved to the RCB, it was the house was just like plasterboard walls, not like the solid houses you get in Germany.
Yeah.
And I remember standing in the kitchen, bloody freezing. There was no central heating like all the quarters in Germany had central heating. And this one didn't. It just had one fire in the living room, and the rest of the house was freezing. And I remember standing in the kitchen with my dad, who was like 6'3" guardsman sort of thing. And I said, not very nice here, is it, Dad? I said, it's a bit like a shy's house. And he went, shut up, it's where you're going to live. And that's it. You just have to adapt, innit?
Yeah.
You just have to adapt. I mean, there's also sort of like the sad parts of being a pad's brat.
Yeah.
It's like you make friends, and then in a couple of years' time, when your dad gets posted, you're going to have to leave them friends behind.
Yeah.
And you'll possibly never see them again. But obviously, due to Facebook and that, I'm in contact with some of them.
Yeah.
But I've not actually seen them because typical pads brats, you're all over the world. So, you can see them on Facebook and you can see what's happening and, how they're getting on with their life. But you don't always get that chance to do a reunion.
No, I mean, that was...
So, yeah, that was a sad...
Yeah, that was one of the questions I was going to ask. Sorry. Sorry to interrupt you. It's hard doing this over the internet sometimes. There's a bit of latency and stuff like that. So I was going to ask, what was it like, moving around frequently and making new friends? Not so much having to move on, because you've just mentioned that yourself, but making new friends, fitting in. Did you have to feel as though you were forced to fit in, or?
I think because of who we are, we make friends quick. Because I suppose subconsciously it's like, make a friend quick because you're going to move on in 2 years, 3 years or whatever. So, I mean, and some postings we went to, I mean, when I went to, when we went to Berlin, actually, I was, no, not Berlin, sorry. When we went to Rhein-Darlen, the teacher said to me, said to whoever in the class, oh, who's in 4JG? And this lad put his hand up and was a class geek. He put his hand up and he goes, I am, miss. He said, all right, you can look after Tracey for the day. And I was like, oh, bloody hell. I'm stuck with him for the day. But so then we was walking down the corridor and all of a sudden from the top of the stairs, this lass shouts down, Tracey! And it was one of the lasses I used to go to school with in Berlin. So sometimes you used to meet up with your old mates from other postings, which was great, Very rarely, mind, but when we went to the RCB, my dad then was sort of like on his own. He was away from the battalion for good. So all my battalion friends, I didn't see them again.
Yeah, that's a shame. I mean, I was lucky that with being in the artillery, you tend to move as a unit. And it's probably the Coldstream Guards did to start with. But,
well, yeah, they did as well.
Yeah.
But we did from like Iserlohn, Munster, Chelsea Barracks. It was like the 1st Battalion or the 2nd Battalion. But then, like I said, my dad, I think because he was sort of a sporty bloke, he got a job as an instructor down at the RCB. So, teaching the young officers to jump over this and jump over that. Which was good for him because later on, he became part of the training wing in Rhein-Darlen. So he was doing all the BFTs, CFTs and that, and, working down the ranges, shoving them all in the gas chambers, which he loved.
Yeah.
Whereas with the battalion, he wouldn't have done that, But, no, I mean, I've always been proud to be a forces kid, always, regardless of what regiment sort of thing. And I tend to, I suppose, bloke-wise, the reason I'm single is because civvies don't get me. Well, civvies don't get me. They don't. So my husband, my ex-husband, let's say, I divorced him in 1999. He was RAF. So that was a bit of a jump to the dark side or the easy side. So, but he was he got me because he was forces mentality.
Mm.
But I've had a couple of partners since '99, but they don't get me. They don't get my humour. They don't get my sort of resilience to stuff. They don't get my work ethic. They just don't get me.
Yeah.
So that's why they're not here.
So leading on from that then,
Yeah.
so how did you find like when the stresses of army life affected the family? If that's not too personal a question.
Well, we were brought up strict. I mean, my dad was a bit of like room inspections on a Saturday morning before you got your pocket money. Yeah. It was like, we're not your soldiers, Dad. We're your kids. But, and then when we come home from school, it was like shoes lined up in front of the fireplace. So he would sit there and bull them at night time. So we went to school the next day with the shiniest shoes on, spit and polished. Um, but no, it wasn't stress to us. It was normal,
Yeah.
you know. I mean, whether my mum and dad were stressed, we never noticed as such because my dad used to shout all the time. That was who he was. Yeah, he'd tell you off all the time. Your room's messy. Do this, jump there, do that.
Yeah.
But it's like when we went to Purbright, we went to obviously the swimming pool on camp, and he said, "Right, I'm going to teach you how to swim." So he took us to the poolside and threw us in. That was it. So you either sank or you swam, and that was it. But I think you get tough being a forces kid. You don't put up with you do put up with stuff that other kids wouldn't put up with because you're more resilient. That's what Pad's Brat means. It's like we're brave, resilient, adaptable, and tough.
I'll have to get
So
I'll
yeah.
have to get my daughter to listen to this and remember. Yeah. How did you deal with like the separation? So if your dad went away for a long time on any tours or anything like that, how did you handle that as a family?
To be honest, the only tour I remember him going on is in the '60s. He went to Aden,
Yeah.
and Daddy's gone away, and that's it. We got like Auntie so and so next door, Auntie so and so on the other side. My mum used to go to work in the Canadian NAFI, like I said. We had people around us. When the husbands went away, all the wives were in the same boat.
Yeah.
So all the kids were in the same boat. So we didn't really notice that daddies had gone because all the mummies were looking after all the children. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So as a battalion, you all work together, you know. So if you don't see Mrs. Smith for a couple of days, well, pop in and see Mrs. Smith then, see if she's all right. So that's, again, another forces thing that you can live in Civvy Street on a road and you don't know your neighbours, even though you've lived there 20 years.
Yeah.
Whereas on camp or on an army estate, everybody knows everybody, which isn't always good.
Yeah.
Nosy neighbours.
Yeah, I know.
But no, it's more together. It's more togetherness, isn't it? Sort of really, we're a family,
Yeah.
and it's also regardless what regiment. If you can have a guardsman, and then next door, like you say, you got artillery or REME, but you're all in the same job.
Yeah.
You're all in the same family, and his kids are no different to your kids. Just because your dad's a guardsman and his dad's a blooming, rag and oils or something,
Yeah.
you're just all the same.
Oh,
So
you get
I enjoyed it.
you get some wives that are a bit funny like that, I must admit. Yeah. But some of those
Well,
wives.
yeah, but some of the wives though, if they're not born into the forces, it's like, all the girls love a soldier in uniform, but then they marry him, then they get posted to Germany, then they go, "Oh, I miss my mummy, I miss my mummy." Well, you're not a forces wife then. toughen up or bugger off. But that, a lot of marriages did break up because the wife couldn't, she didn't want to be away from the family so long. Oh, I didn't realise we was going to go to Germany. Thought it was just going to be posted down the road from my mum. No, that's not how it works. But no, I think it's great. You're more broad-minded being a forces kid.
Yeah.
I've seen things that other kids didn't see. Obviously the Berlin stuff. I mean, I speak fluent German, so that's not through school. That's just through being with the people. Which come in handy last October because I went back to Berlin with my Royal Artillery friend. Yeah, he's ex-artillery, my best mate. So, and he still likes his explosives. He had a few bloody flares in his bloody glove box. And I said to him, we was out in the car, and I said to him, I'm dying for a wee. So nipped out the side of the car and squatted down. Next minute, he's in the glove box, maybe sparking off this flare, which put my neck and nearly fell over. But no, yeah.
I was going to say, how did you find being part of a military army influenced your identity and your belonging? But I think from the last 20 minutes, we've kind of gathered that. I think you should have been in the army, to be honest.
Well, saying that, and this is no disrespect to the females in the WRAC, I wanted to join up as a PTI, but we was in Germany at the time, and my dad said, no, you're not joining the army, although my brothers followed in daddy's footsteps and joined up, and I wanted to join up as PTI, like I said. And I said, why not? And he says, because they don't make combat trousers your size. They only make them in extra large. So that was his excuse. So because he didn't let me join as a PTI, I sort of became like a civvy fitness instructor and swimming teacher, and sort of had to do it in Civvy Street as opposed to, But I used to work with the RCT in Germany and still in touch with some of them today. So I've always sort of, I don't know, I've always sort of kept my connections with the forces, because if I don't, then I'm on my own. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you keep in contact with your army mates.
Yeah.
I just feel it's part of me. I'm very, although I never served, but I grew up in the army and then married into the RAF. So 39 years of my life was forces. And I've got forces friends now. And that's me through and through. I'm just a forces, whatever mentality,
Yeah.
And I always will be.
And do you find it hard to relate to civilian people? And like you were saying earlier, they don't get your sense of humour and stuff like that.
They don't get me full stop.
Yeah.
I mean, I've built 2 garden sheds in my garden. I've got more power tools than some blokes, and I'm not scared to use them, because when you live a life where you have to try new things in new places, so for me, playing with power tools is like, well, I've got to try it. So if I don't try it, then I'll never learn how to use it, sort of thing, And then if I want something, my dad was always like, well, if you want it, make it then. So when we was in Germany and my dad came out of the army, he finished his long service in Rheindahlem, and he got taken on by the MOD as a range warden. Because obviously being down a training wing, he knew his weapons, etc. So they gave him the job as range warden. And then when I finished working with the RCT, there was a job going down the ranges, so I became his 2IC. So he was always like with the wood supplied by the MOD for the targets.
Yeah.
We used to build things, so we was always making things at work. When there's no units there firing,
Yeah.
we used to go, oh, what should we make? What should we make? So we used to use all the target wood or the wood that we used for the frames of that for the 4-foot targets. And so I've grown up building stuff and making stuff and not being scared to try to make stuff, So some of the stuff I make now, people go, wow, you should open a business. But to me, it's just
It is what it
easy,
is, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find that civilians like misunderstand the experiences that
Yeah.
children have or would be going through and stuff like that, and don't take it into account?
Yeah, they don't, civvies just don't get us. That's it, full stop. There's no other thing to say, really. They're different people.
Yeah.
And we are different people.
So, like when you were going to school in Wiltshire, and how did like the teachers treat you as well? Did they treat you differently because you're a forces chaplain?
No. I'll say the teachers in England didn't treat us different. We was just the new kids.
Yeah.
In Germany, it was a bit of a joke, really. When I joined the school, my last school, so I was 15 and a bit cheeky. I've always been a bit cheeky. That's another army characteristic, as in banter and cheekiness. So I joined the school, and I was sat in a lesson on my very first day in the lesson. And obviously we get teachers posted over from the UK to do sort of teaching service schools. I was sat in registration, and this teacher come across me, and she said, oh, Tracey Barney. And I was like, yes, miss. And she said my name again. I went, yes, miss. And again. I thought, what's the matter with the woman? Can't she hear me? I said, yes, miss. And she said, no, you address me as ma'am. I said, no, I don't. And she said, you do. And because the teachers over there, when they go over there, they get officer status, which I think is wrong. It's wrong because, first of all, they've got a cushy job, and then they get given officer status. Whereas my dad, he was a colour sergeant. He'd been in the army for donkey's years. He's worked his way up the ranks, yet they get officer status.
Yeah.
So anyway, she said, you call me mum. I said, no, I don't. So she said, and why not? I said, well, are you an officer in the British Army? Well, of course not. I said, are you a member of the royal family? Well, of course not. I said, in that case, then you're Mrs. Fletcher. And I got booted out of the class for a year.
Wow.
So that whole year, she belittled me by making me go and sit. I was in the 5th year at the time, so my last year of school, and she made me go and sit with the first years, and that was for the whole year. So I had to sit in the corner of the library with the first years. And when they said to their teacher, oh, why is that big girl in the corner? Well, children, because she was a naughty girl. And I thought, oh, shut up.
Jesus.
But yeah.
Different times.
So because I didn't call her, a bloody mom, I thought, no. So all the teachers in that school, all the female teachers, I always addressed them as Mrs. Smith, Mrs. Brown, whatever they were, because that's what they were to me.
Yeah.
I wasn't giving them the bloody officer status that they didn't deserve.
When you moved back to the UK as a family, did you find it difficult, like settling and integrating back into normal life, let's say, civilian life, like as a family?
No, because my dad was still a soldier. My mum run the club on camp, and we went to a civvy school, but we were still army kids. So nothing changed for us.
What about when you left?
We got civvy friends.
Yeah. What about when you left the army? What, like when you left the army totally?
Yeah, no. When my dad left the army, that was no. When he left in '83. So I was sort of grown up then.
Right.
So I'd been away from home since my late teens anyway. So but I was still in Forces land, if you like, because I stayed in the Rhine-Darling area.
Yeah.
And then I met my husband at RAF Bruggen. So I still had Forces surroundings. Then came back with him, came back to St Athens when he went on a fitters course. Then went over to Wattisham, and then went back to Bruggen, and then went to Gibraltar.
Oh,
Yay!
a decent portion out of all of them then.
Yeah. So yeah, but that's what I miss.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in this house now for 18 years, and this is the longest I've ever lived anywhere.
Yeah.
So
Did you find that
yeah.
difficult, like staying in one place?
No, not really. Even though, I mean, I know them next door, and I don't get on with them that way, and I get on with a few neighbours across the road. But apart from that, that's it, really.
Yeah.
I
mean, I know
'cause
my kids, my son was glad when I left the army. He couldn't wait for us to get out of that environment. But my daughter, she finds it hard to stay in one place, really. She's got proper itchy feet. If she's lived in a house for too long with her kids and that, and she's like, I
yeah,
want to move, and
yeah. Well, I think I'm a bit different because when I moved into this house, I put an extension on the side. I did a loft conversion, and then I put a workshop down the garden. So I'm not going to up sticks
fair
and
enough. Yeah.
sort of, yeah. So yeah, I spent a lot of money doing bits and pieces, so I'm not going to up sticks in 2 years and bugger off,
Yeah. So if you were to give advice to any Forces kids who might stumble across this podcast, because it'll be entitled something like that, the title of it will be like Pad's Brat or something like that.
Yeah.
What advice would you be able to give them, or do you think they should, impart your knowledge on the future generations, if you don't mind?
Well, Forces kids, I would say enjoy the experience. Make the most of what life you're in. Because it is a good life. It is a, sort of, it broadens your mind and it gives you better life skills, I think, because you see you meet a lot of different people from different sort of families, you could meet some Geordies or you could meet some, Essex girls or Scottish. I mean, we used to have, it was a laugh. When we was in Berlin, we was there with the King's Own Scottish Borderers, right? And obviously, us being an English regiment, them being a Scottish regiment, we used to fight like cat and dog. But that was it. It was like the jocks versus the English,
Yeah.
And we was kids at the time, but it was just fun.
Yeah.
It was fun to fight them, And my dad's better than your dad,
Yeah.
The Guards are better than the Cosbys.
Yeah.
And it was just great. And we went to youth club in Berlin where Rudolf Hess was in Spandau prison next door. How many kids can say that?
No,
We've watched the changing of the guard at Spandau prison, where you've got Americans, the French, the Russians, the British. No, I loved it. I loved it. So my advice to any Forces kids, obviously times have changed. The walls come down and the army's got smaller, the RAF's got smaller, all tri-services have got smaller. But whatever they're in, whatever their dad's in, just enjoy it. Enjoy it, make the most of it, because you will make friends for life. Whereas civvy friends, once you move out of the area, that's it, they're gone.
Yeah.
Whereas Forces kids, you will somehow find each other again, and you will have friends for life.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said earlier. They'll get to see things that most children won't. Most children will be born, grow up, and live in one town until they leave school, and then probably be stuck in that town as well. Whereas, even in my service. My kids went to Germany twice. They said they lived on the south coast. We lived near Stonehenge, and they got Stonehenge was just round the corner. My son just
Oh, was you up at Larkill or
yeah,
something
yeah.
then? Salisbury.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I spent 2 years there. The kids, and it was one of them.
Yeah, I did a lot of work did some work up in Larkill and oh bloody hell, what's the other one? What's the one down at Bulford?
Yeah, I think we've kind of covered everything really. Let me have a look. I wrote some notes down, and I'm glad we didn't stick with the notes because they were a bit formal, like what particular tradition do you have
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And
We don't do formal, do we? We
no,
just do chit chat.
yeah, I mean it's
And once you get talking forces, you don't stop.
yeah,
That's the whole thing.
well that's it. Yeah, I mean
To be honest, that's another thing. I think forces people, you can walk in a room and within minutes you're just talking to anybody and everybody, aren't you? Whereas you don't sit, not a wallflower.
yeah,
I mean, like, if I go to a do, if I hear music, I mean, I don't drink. Not because of any reason, not because I'm an ex-alcoholic or anything. I just don't drink. But I can go to a do, and if I hear music that I like, I'm up on the floor dancing.
yeah,
I don't give a monkey's. Whereas I think civvy people, they have to get really blottoed before they get off their asses.
yeah,
I don't. But that's again, I think that's more, again, forces mentality. You go out to enjoy yourself.
yeah.
So, and you could talk to anybody of any level, whereas I don't know. I think civvy people might be a bit sort of like shy at coming forward to a posh person, whereas I'm not because I've spoke to Rodneys before.
Yeah.
Don't mean nothing to me just because they got a plum in their mouth. Yeah.
So do you think with like with your upbringing in the forces and all that, how do you think it shaped your career choices? Did it make any difference to them, or I mean, I know like you said you drive a truck now, and that's not a common thing for the
Yeah.
lady to do, really.
Well, no, but again, it's we're not scared of challenges.
Yeah.
Because we have a challenge every posting. We have a challenge that we start a new school, we have to make new friends, we live in a new area, we've got a new house to, mess up.
Yeah.
But we face challenges all the time as a kid.
Yeah.
And I think that makes you a tougher adult. Not tough as in go around beating everybody up, but it just makes you I don't know, accept challenges easier. So for me, like I said, I spent most of my adult career doing fitness and swimming. Then because my dad did a lot of fitness and sort of stuff, not swimming, he couldn't swim. But his joints, as he got older, his joints started to go.
Yeah.
So I sort of thought to myself, well, I'm going to get to a stage where I'm not going to keep doing it. I don't want to go the same way as my dad went. So, but I needed a job that was outside and kept me fit. So I became a bin man.
Right.
So I was chasing, I was chasing the bin lorries and emptying the bins. And so that kept me fit and it was a job. But the more I sat in the lorry, the more I thought, I could drive this. So then I went and done my class 2.
Yeah.
And then driving tippers. And then the more I drove class 2, some of my mates said, go for your class 1. I was like, no, you can bugger off. That's a bit big for me. But they kept on badgering me, saying, good driver, Tracey, a good driver. So I bit the bullet and went for my class 1. And then, look at me. But no, I just think it again, the forces mentality. It's like, can I do it? Yes, I can do it.
Yeah.
And I also, at work, they sort of praise me for my work ethic. Again, I think that's a forces thing. I don't do sickies.
Yeah.
I don't let anybody down. I'm always early. Again, a forces thing, early for appointments and early for work.
Yeah.
And they just sort of like said, well, we're giving it, we're letting you drive the Arctic at work because we know you can. And I'm a team player, because I always think that, if you're not a team player, especially forces wise, if you don't work as a team, somebody could die,
Yeah.
But that's obviously the ones in uniform. I do regret never having a uniform on. I do. The only uniform I had on was brownies, and that was second-hand uniform for my mum. So it's too tight to buy me my own. But no, I mean I'm a typical. I mean I'm forces through and through.
Yeah.
I really am. I'm terrible, and it's like, again, we're organised. I mean, I'm not saying everybody in the forces is organised, because some of them are right scruffy bastards. But I've got that house proud ethic. I'm neat. I'm organised. But at work, they see that as a negative. I mean, I'm having a challenge with them at the moment, because I never sheeted up a lorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
I never sheeted up a lorry. So I went out on the open road without a sheet over my load, and they said that I failed to carry out a safety critical procedure. So I went, no. I said, I forgot. I'm not a robot.
Yeah.
I forgot. I said, so, because normally I'm OCD, I follow patterns. Oh, you're OCD, are you? Well, that's a mental illness. I went, no, it's not. It's a forces background. But they don't get it.
Yeah.
They don't get it. So, bloody civvies for you.
I mean, one thing they won't appreciate, or they won't understand or appreciate, is they're moving from place to place. What it had to be like when you handed the house over, and handed the
Oh,
quarter over.
yeah. Yeah.
That's like all hands to the
Yeah.
pump to get it cleaned, and it has to be immaculate, and people coming in and inspecting it and stuff like that. You can't imagine like people leaving council houses having to do that. Some like local.
No, they wouldn't have the standards.
No.
I used to, when I was an RAF wife, I used to think, well, what can I do? I've got little kids. I can't go to full-time work. So I advertised myself as a march out cleaner. So I used to sort of charge 200 quid to do a march out clean. And if your cook is minging, I'll charge you extra 50 quid. Blimmin' heck, I was making a killing. And some of the worst ones, some of the worst ones were officers' quarters.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
Because it was sort of obviously too posh to push the pledge, So, but no, I used to, like I say, I used to do, and I used to pass every march out. I used to say to them, I guarantee you a march out, sort of, you won't fail your march out.
Yeah.
And they did. They sort of passed it every time, because when we were kids, my mum was always doing the march out, and we always had to help her, and make sure you do this, and make sure you clean under the plugs, and like the sink plugs.
Yeah.
Don't just clean the sink. Pick the plug up, look underneath it. Is there any gummy sort of shitty stuff? Yes, there is. Clean it. Everything was clean. Top of the doors and everything.
Yeah.
And again, it's just a way of life, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not sort of like, I don't know.
It's not a hardship.
It's not sort of, no.
Yeah.
It's just a way of life.
Yeah.
So, and you just get used to it.
Yeah. Didn't have to enjoy
It's not a
it,
challenge.
but,
It's just,
it's there.
yeah. No, I didn't. I didn't. When I was married myself to, my RAF husband, I had to do my own march outs, and because I'd grown up in march outs, I knew exactly what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I never failed a march out either. So that's why, like I say, later on, I used to think, oh, I'll make some money out of this. But yeah, and I did. Lots.
Right. Well, I think we've covered everything that we wanted to cover in this one. I'd like to again say thank you for agreeing to do it, and it's been
Oh, you're
lovely chatting to
welcome.
you. And it'll be an eye opener for some people, I must admit. I think they'll find you as a character, not just an ex Forces brat, but as a character. Yeah, I think you should have been in the army, to be honest. Most definitely. Well, I'd just like to thank Tracey for taking the time to be a part of the podcast. I found it entertaining talking to her, and I've enjoyed it. If you like this episode, please leave a comment on whatever platform you have listened to it on. Please share the podcast so that it gets out there, gets more noticed. Thank you. Bye-bye now.